Before 8, let's come back to that conversation then. It would appear a nation obsessed with birthday cake when a world is sadly possibly inching towards some kind of conflagration. Let's get the latest on that from Foreign Secretary Liz Truss, who joins me now. Is anything attempting to be done to try and take the Sturm and Angst and heat out of the position that that President Putin has taken? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Well, we need to deter Putin from an incursion into Ukraine. And what we're doing is supplying defensive weapons to Ukraine. The UK is leading on that. We're also putting in place a very strong package of economic sanctions so that Vladimir Putin understands there'd be a severe cost if he stages an incursion into Ukraine. And we're working with allies to reduce dependence on Russian gas across Europe to make sure that there is less pressure on other European nations.
Are the sanctions in position now? If not, when will they be? Some are saying, not you personally, but people are moving too slowly on these sanctions.
So we are ready to go on sanctions, and we'll also be legislating for even more severe sanctions very shortly. We're coordinating with our allies, but of course we need to make sure that everybody is ready to put those sanctions in place.
You don't think some should be now? You say you're ready to go. I read that he's ready to invade.
Well, we're clear that these are a deterrence, and deterrence works when you use them when the incursion takes place. So these sanctions are ready to go should Vladimir Putin stage an insurgent. And what we're saying to Putin is that this is not going to be easy for Russia. We know the Ukrainians will fight. They have a strong supply of defensive weapons. The UK has helped train up 20,000 troops in Ukraine, and this will result in a quagmire. So the Russians need to be aware that this is not going to be simple or easy. The Ukrainians will fight back, and they have the full support of the United Kingdom and our NATO allies.
What exactly is the UK's deployment in the area, Foreign Secretary?
So we've got troops deployed in Estonia, in our forward presence there, about 800 personnel.
And that's it. Nowhere else in the theatre, as it's called. Just the 800 in Estonia.
Well, that's right. We've got naval support. We're looking at other forms of support we can provide, and it's part of a NATO enhanced forward presence. So, for example, we're leading in Estonia. The Canadians are leading in Lithuania. So there's groupings of NATO forces, and what we are discussing with our NATO allies, and in fact, I was in Brussels talking to the NATO Secretary General on Monday about how we can enhance that presence across those NATO countries. Of course, Ukraine isn't a NATO country, but we are supplying them with defensive weapons so they are able to defend themselves.
How likely is it that the number of troops could increase?
Well, the number of troops within NATO is increasing.
Sorry, UK contingent.
We're looking at the moment. We're also looking at what other types of support we can provide.
What does that mean?
Well, whether it's air support or other types of support.
We've been sending, I understand, some kind of kit, or what exactly have we sent to date?
We sent defensive weapons, so anti-tank weapons.
Right. I just note, you've used the word incursion on 3 occasions, Foreign Secretary. What is the difference between an incursion and an invasion?
Well, an invasion is a narrower definition of moving over the border into Ukraine. Incursion is broader, so it means any Russian movement into Ukraine. It's a technical term that we use, which makes it much more specific to be able to target these sanctions.
The word incursion is a technical term, is it?
The word incursion is broader than the word invasion.
Right. I mean, I just imagine if the Russians were to come into southwest Norfolk, your constituents would probably see that more as an invasion than it would an incursion, wouldn't they?
That's correct. But exactly, we just want to make sure it's as broad as possible, but it does include an invasion. That's very clear.
All right. We have to talk about a couple of other matters. There's a lot of excitement, it would appear in some circles, about the Sue Gray report. Can you, Foreign Secretary, give us an idea when we might hear it or when the Prime Minister might receive it?
I don't know is the answer. I think it's fairly imminent, but we don't know when it will be.
One of your Conservative colleagues is suggesting that the Prime Minister was in some way ambushed by a cake. Do you recognise that?
Look, I don't think it's a good idea to comment on these claims before we've seen the results of the report. So I'm waiting for the report, which is going to present all of the facts of the case.
Conor Burns, of course, has nothing to do with the report. He said that do you think someone can be ambushed by a birthday cake? A question I never thought I'd ask the Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom.
I don't know about that, as I've said. I'm not aware of the details, and we need to wait for the report, Nick.
All right. Do we need to wait for a decision as regards so-called awful April? You'll be aware national insurance will increase, energy costs will increase, VAT is, of course, imposed as well. Might there be a decision, a change in some of those policies, Foreign Secretary?
Look, we know that it's difficult times and that the cost of living is an issue for people. And, of course, I'm sure the Chancellor is looking at that and seeing what can be done.
But you're a very prominent member of the Cabinet. Would you support the delay in the rise, for instance, in national insurance?
Nick, the decision has been made on national insurance. That was a collective decision, and it's going ahead.
So you would not support the idea of delaying it in any way?
I'm not going to comment on internal discussions. As I've said, the cost of living rise is a concern for the government. I know the Chancellor is looking at what can be done.
So that does, therefore, really allow me to ask the question for a third time. If the Chancellor were to say, I tell you what, I think we need to delay NI, would he gain your support?
I'm not going to debate internal government policy on LBC, much as you want me to, Nick.
OK, all right. One other thing. Why have you upset the former Prime Minister of Australia? Foreign Secretary, he describes you as demented. How do you respond?
Well, I think he was commenting on my speech that I made when I was in Australia.
Yes.
And I was saying that I was concerned about aggressive behaviour by Russia on the border of Ukraine, combined with economic coercion by China on countries like Lithuania and Australia, and how we needed to work with our allies like Australia, like the US, like Europe, to challenge that aggressive behaviour. That's what he seemed to be objecting to. And Nick, I couldn't possibly comment why he might be objecting to that and who he might be representing in those comments.
Paul Keating lastly saying the reality is Britain does not add up to a row of beans when it comes to East Asia. Truss would do us all a favour by hightailing it back to her collapsing, disreputable government, leaving Australia to find its own way in Asia. A response, if you would, Foreign Secretary.
Well, we had a very good meeting with the Australian Foreign and Defence Minister. We're talking about how we can work more closely together. We're talking about the AUKUS nuclear-powered submarines that we are working on with Australia and the US to help improve the security of the Asia-Pacific region. And I think that is a strong contribution that the UK is making to the Asia-Pacific region that will help protect freedom and democracy.
Lastly, do you think there will be an incursion or an invasion, whichever word you choose?
I am determined to do all we can to deter Vladimir Putin from making that massive mistake.
I'm grateful for your time. Thank you. Liz Truss, Foreign Secretary, appearing here on LBC. What, 1 minute after 8. The news is next.